Hi everyone! So this is our first in a series of videos about the human reproductive system. As you can see, this is going to be dealing with topics 4.1 to 4.7 in our World's Workbook. And as we go along through our series of videos, it's going to be showing specifically what textbook pages we are looking at, and I'll refer to a lot of things in the textbook. So the first video is basically the intro to human reproduction. So let's get started. So when we're looking at reproduction in humans, it's defined as when organisms are making offspring similar to themselves. Now, one thing that we do have to specify is because we are talking about humans, so the offspring in this case is going to be human offspring. Now, we also need to remember that that is similar and not identical because humans undergo sexual reproduction. Where half of the genetic information comes from the biological mother and half of the genetic information comes from the biological father. And the combination of this genetic information gives you all the genetic information that you need for the offspring. So our gametes is our scientific name for the sex cells. So our gametes is our scientific name for our sex cells. And the type of gamete really depends on the type of organism. So sperm is the name of the gamete that comes from the male reproductive system, and ovum is the name of the gamete that comes from the female reproductive system. Now, the common term for the ovum would also be considered the egg, but we're going to be using the proper term, which is the ovum. So when we're talking about sperm, and remember this is the sex cells that come from the male reproductive system. It is pretty basic in the sense that it does not look like any other cell in the biological male body, where the structure looks like this, where we have the head, which has the genetic information. And remember, the sex cells, so the gametes, the sperm, and the ovum, have half of the genetic information required for a human. So a human requires 46 total chromosomes, so half of that would be 23 chromosomes. So the head contains the genetic information, which has a total of 23 chromosomes, which is, again, half of the genetic info. Now, the body is basically the structure that has all of the mechanisms required for the sperm to swim. And the tail is the mechanism which basically powers the sperm, so the sperm can swim through the female reproductive system and make it to the ovum to fertilize. So the head has something called an acrosome, and the acrosome is the top part of the head, and the acrosome is where all of the enzymes, so again specific molecules, are required to enter the ovum. So we have the nucleus that has our 23 chromosomes in the head, and our acrosome is a specific part just on top of the head that has enzymes that allows the sperm to enter the ovum for fertilization. The body is the middle piece, and this is where you have all of the mechanisms needed to function the tail. And the tail is basically the component of the sperm that allows the sperm to quote-unquote swim through the female reproductive system. So this is basically a view of human sperm cells at 400 times magnification. We can see the dark structures right here. That's the head of our individual sperm cells. And then we can see down here, this is our tail. And then this component right here would be the body. So again, these are the gametes, so the reproductive cells that are found in biological males. So we can see right here, so we have all of these sperm cells trying to enter and fertilize the ovum, which is again our female reproductive gamete. So this is our sperm. So we have our ovum, which is actually quite large. Of all of the cells in the human organism, the ovum is actually the largest cell, individual cell. And then we have all of these right here, which are sperm, which are trying to penetrate the ovum. Now, what's really interesting about the ovum is that once one sperm penetrates the ovum, there's a cascade of biochemical reactions that take place that prevent other sperms from entering the ovum, because if there's too much genetic information, the cell division can't happen properly. So our second gamete is the ovum, and again, these are the reproductive cells that are found in biological female organisms. So this is the female reproductive cell. Now, the nucleus, which is this structure right here, has the 23 chromosomes. And again, this 23 chromosomes is half of the genetic information because, again, a human requires 46 chromosomes. Half comes from the biological male, so 23. Half comes from the biological female, 23. Add them together, you get your total 46. You have multiple mitochondria. And remember, our mitochondria, again, is the powerhouse of the cell. This is where the structure, where cellular respiration occurs. And remember, dividing cells require a lot of energy. So it makes sense that the ovum is going to have multiple mitochondria so that in the initial cell division phases, it basically has enough of those organelles to be able to burn glucose, to be able to have energy necessary for this cell division to take place. And again, there are multiple structures that prevent the multiple sperm from fertilizing it, because if there's too much sperm that enters the cell, that means you have multiple excess genetic information, and the fertilizing process will not take place. And some of these structures are called the zona pedicula, the corona rada, and then the cortical gradule. But the key thing that we need to understand is that there are structures in the ovum that prevent multiple sperm from fertilizing it. So as we can see right here, this is, so when I say this structure that I'm circling in black is one ovum. And we can see it is actually quite large. It is the largest cell that we have in the human body. And again, this is found in only biological female bodies. And it is exceedingly large because the ovum has to have the necessary structures to allow for the initial cell division processes to take place. The sperm is very small because all it really needs to be is large enough for the genetic information to be inserted into the ovum. All of the cell replication, all of the structures necessary for initial energy production to take place has to happen in the ovum. So this is again just another zoom of the ovum. So we have right here our microscopic image of an ovum. And here, what we have right here is a sketch of the ovum. So we have, again, our nucleus, which we see right here. So our nucleus, now again, our nucleus only has half of the genetic information, and the equivalent structure in the microscopic image is right here. We have multiple mitochondria. We don't really see it in our microscopic image, but we have multiple mitochondria because, again, all of these cell divisions are happening inside of the fertilized egg, inside of the fertilized ovum. So there needs to have multiple structures that allow for glucose to be burned to fuel the multiple cell divisions. We have, again, around the ovum our zona pedicula, which basically has a lot of enzymes here, and our cortical granules that prevent multiple fertilizations from the sperm. Because again, if there's too much genetic information, the fertilization process cannot happen. And what we actually have right here is an image of in vitro fertilization. Vitro means glass. So in vitro fertilization is when fertilization occurs outside of the body. So we can see right here, we have our individual sperm cell. So we see here, we have the head. Here, we have our body. And then this component right here is our tail, is being inserted into an ovum. So in this image, we can't really see where the nucleus is, but the nucleus is going to be in the darkened structure in the middle. And this basically ensures that you have one sperm that is being fertilized by one ovum. So in vitro fertilization is a type of technique that doctors can use when individuals are having difficulty getting pregnant. So they would basically fertilize the ovum outside of the body, and then when fertilization happens, they would insert the fertilized egg into the uterus. So that's our intro to human reproduction, where we were looking at our two gametes, which is our two sex cells. The male gamete is the sperm, which is produced by the male reproductive system, and the female gamete is the ovum, which is produced by the female reproductive system. Join us next time.